What's going on, YouTube? Thanks for joining the channel. Today I am on a shotgun, the Royal Enfield shotgun. This is new for Royal Enfield in 2024, and it uses the 648 parallel twin CC engine that's shared across 3 other platforms: the Continental GT, the Interceptor, and the Super Meteor 650. I think what's interesting about the shotgun is it's made to be customized, right? So like Royal Enfield keeps talking about customization, custom. So I think that's a unique thing about the Royal shotgun. And also it kind of sits in between a cruiser, but it's not really a cruiser, not quite a scrambler, it's not quite a roadster. It's kind of its own thing. And I think the two things together, in terms of being custom and the focus on custom and not having quite a niche, could be a good thing for this guy. All right, so let's break this review down into a couple of different categories. The first one being aesthetics. This shares the same frame as the Super Meteor 650, but it looks quite different. It kind of has that floating seat, which is the first thing that I noticed, and it's also just like mostly blacked out engine. Has a little bit more of a sinister look to it, right? Definitely sits a little bit higher than the Super Meteor 650. The seat height, I believe, comes in around 31 inches. And I really do like the design aesthetics on the Royal Enfield, the shotgun. I can't quite put my finger down on what it looks like, but when I get on this bike, when I see it, it kind of gives me like a little bit of a Sportster vibe, a Harley Davidson Sportster. So when I look at this bike, it does have a little bit of a shorter wheelbase than the Super Meteor 650. It's kind of like scrunched in and tilted forward just a little bit. So it definitely looks a lot sportier than the Super Meteor 650. And again, the way that Royal Enfield is marketing this bike is kind of like it's blank slate, right? It's made to be customized. What you get right now is not what you might end up with a few months after ownership, which is kind of the same ethos as Harley Davidson Sportster, right? You can kind of like make it your own. All right, so let's talk about the power and performance of this bike. It does, like I mentioned, it does come with a parallel twin engine, 648 cc's, putting about 47 horsepower and 39 foot-pounds of torque. So while that may not seem like world-breaking numbers, while all these manufacturers are chasing higher numbers, I will say it does have a lot of good usable power. Just like riding around Spirit around these roads does completely fine. You could definitely take this on the highway and be fine with it. Now, it might not be the most ideal bike for long stretches on the highway, but with a bike like this, you might not want to. These are kind of the roads that you might want to take this bike on, right? Like city streets or suburban areas, twisties, things of that nature. I think that's where this bike is really going to shine. Going back to the design for a second, I really do dig the Royal Enfield aesthetics, like the use of their colors, the badging. Nothing's too overly gaudy. Everything is like really well done. It's very sleek looking. So design-wise, I think Royal Enfield does a really good job. And all of this for a pretty affordable price package. Pleasantly surprised. All right, so let's talk about the handling and rideability of this bike. The shotgun comes with an 18-inch front tire, I believe about 16-inch rear tire. So this bike feels really flickable, and it sits up higher. So I feel like I'm sitting on top of this bike as opposed to like in the cockpit or inside the bike. So I feel like I'm sitting on top of this bike instead of sitting inside the bike, like down low. And so when you're on top of the bike, you get great ground clearance, a very, very flickable bike as well. I think you can definitely manage corners, manage bends pretty easily on this guy. I've tried out a few different Royal Enfields, and I gotta say, like, they are doing something right with the seats. I would say the Interceptor has probably the best seat, but this is no slouch either. The seat on the shotgun, it feels really nice and plush, feels planted, feels firm. Definitely a really, really good job on the seats, guys. Let's talk about the ergonomics as well. I'm not in a seating position like a cruiser, but it does kind of remind me a little bit of the Sportster, except that you're sitting up a little bit higher than a Sportster, but it does come with mid controls. You're lean forward just a tad bit. You got a slight raise to the bars as well. Not incredibly uncomfortable by any means. Hell yeah. there's a little weird whistling coming from the engine at times. I'm not sure what that's about. It's kind of interesting. But yeah, I like the mid controls on this because I feel like I have a little bit more control over the bike. You know, I can kind of grip the tank with my knees and lean forward, get a little bit more of an aggressive position, or I can kind of sit back and relax and ride like this. I'm kind of enjoying this guy. I'd love to see what kind of aftermarket options are available on this, because that's one of the big selling points on the shotgun, right? And so would love to know, like, what are the customization options? I'm kind of enjoying like standing up on the bike over big bumps. I will say even going over some of the bumps doesn't feel bad at all. I will say the suspension is a little bit bouncy, bouncier than I would like, but I can't complain. This engine has a real nice grunt to it. Picks up real quick. Yeah, you could really do some damage on this guy. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the dual analog digital gauge here. It's got a lot of information. It also comes with this little navigation gauge at the right. Kind of cool. You got fuel gauge, you got tach, speedometer here. Very, very legible. I kind of don't like that it's offset, but you know, I'm kind of nitpicking here at this point. But overall, for the price point, I believe it comes in a little over 7K. Depending on what kind of paint options you get, it's around like the 7K mark for this bike, and I think that's a very reasonable price to be asking for a motorcycle like this. So I love that, you know, for 7K you get a bike that's really, really capable and looks good, handles well, and with some customization options, I think you can really, really dial it out nicely. And so I would be proud to own something like this. Man, this will be a fun little weekend bike. I kind of love inexpensive bikes in general. Now, I'm not saying $7,000 isn't a lot of money. That's not what I'm saying. But compared to like cruisers and other bikes on the market, man, $7,000, you have more than enough money to do to add customizations. Yeah, the gears feel really good. Has a good feedback. The throttle feels really nice. Very responsive. There's not a whole lot of lag. It feels linear to a degree. The rear brake feels really nice. The rear brake is actually very, very strong. The front brake, not as much, but the rear brake is it's actually quite nice. Has a nice bite to it. It's made to be a little bit more flickable. Feels like it's made to be ridden a little bit more aggressively, which is kind of nice. I like it. I feel like you can really rip around in the streets with this. You know, at first I was kind of put off by the seat height because I am coming in at 5'8". But the more that I'm playing around with this bike, you know, there are some benefits, right? Like I'm standing up on the pegs, feel like there's a little bit more control over the bike and more maneuverability on the bike. So that's kind of cool. There it was again, that little whistling from the engine. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but there is a little bit of a whistling. I'm not sure what that's about. My buddy behind me over there was telling me the same thing. Thanks for tuning into this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the demo. Great bike, $7,000, can't go wrong. But until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.